What makes the mainsail unique is that it's flown at all times. Therefore, it must be very flexible and accommodate a wide range of conditions. Because of this, we stretch and twist it into every shape imaginable. Another thing unique about the main is it's attached on 2 of its 3 sides. Along the boom, so we can adjust the outhaul and the overall foot depth, and along the mast, so we can bend the mast to adjust the overall depth of the sail. The mainsail provides directional control and stability for the boat, and more directly affects the rudder angle. Too much rudder angle means too much drag of the rudder. The thing that's hard for the main sheet trimmer is that every crew member on the boat, including the helmsman, gets to see the main at all times. Believe me, with the crew I sail with, everybody's got their own idea on how it should be trimmed. Because the main spends most of its life behind the Genua, it must be trimmed to the Genua setup. Therefore, plenty of interaction between the Genua trimmer and the main sheet trimmer is prudent. So the main sheet trimmer's job is to keep the boat balanced and to keep the boat speed at a consistent high. A good example of this is if you get a puff and you don't see the speed go up, you can be sure the main sheet trimmer hasn't adapted to the new condition. In order to do your job as a main sheet trimmer properly, you've got to know your controls and what they do. The best person I know to demonstrate the mains, controls, and the principles of trimming is our main sheet trimmer, Tom McLaughlin.
We have 7 controls to adjust the angle of the mainsail to the wind and its overall shape. By shape, I mean its depth and the position of that depth, either fore or aft. The main sheet, I think, is the most important control, and it has your biggest effect on speed. It sets the twist in the mainsail, and by tensioning the main sheet, you can close the upper leech or reduce the twist, stalling the top telltales, or by easing the sheet, you can open the top, letting the telltales fly, giving you more forward force and less heeling moment. This is particularly important in strong winds. The traveler swings the entire mainsail like a door. As you get overpowered, it's important to drop the traveler to leeward, giving you a lot more punch and forward force. The backstay flattens the mainsail through mast bend. When I tension this hydraulic backstay, the mast will increase in bend as much as 7 or 8 inches. This flattens the sail a lot, and when I get up to maximum backstay pressure, sometimes I'll have too much bend. I'll get big, ugly-looking wrinkles coming out of the clew going right to the middle of the spar. To restrict the mast bend and keep some power in the sail, I'll tension the running backstay up in the middle of the mast to keep the mast from overbending. Now in fractional rigs, the running backstay really takes the role of the hydraulic backstay to work in harmony with the Genua, and they have a special check stay which fits in the middle of the mast to prevent overbending, like our running back on this masthead rig. The Cunningham tensions the luff and pulls the draft further forward. You're going to find that with maximum mast bend, the draft appears to be way back by the leech, and pulling on the Cunningham will pull the shape back forward in the sail again. The outhaul controls the depth of the sail in the bottom third. Sailing to windward, you'll tension this pretty good to close the foot shelf, make the sail efficient behind the big Genua. Off the wind, you can slack it right out to open the foot shelf, giving the mainsail lots of power for off the wind. Once you're sailing on a jib reach or a spinnaker reach and the boom goes off the corner of the boat, right off the edge, you'll use the boom vang to control twist in the main instead of the main sheet. And the main sheet will act, as the traveler did earlier, to swing the whole sail like a barn door and give it its angle of attack to the wind. When we get out on the water, I'll show you how to use these controls in harmony to maximize your performance. The basic question a sail trimmer has to ask is, does the boat need more power, or do you have more power than you can handle? I look at the knot meter to make sure that we're staying at a high speed, a nice constant speed, and at the tiller angle, or the helm that's in the boat. I try to keep about a 3 or 4 degree weather helm so the boat has some lively feel sailing to windward. If we've got too much wind and the rudder angle or tiller angle is 7, 12, or 10 degrees, then I know that it's slowing us down with too much drag in the water. I see the mainsail as really a trim tab on the whole sail plan. And in times of light air when we need more power, I keep the main full, I keep the boom up near the center line of the boat, just like flaps down on an airplane when it needs more lift. And when we're overpowered, as seen by too much weather helm, not accelerating in the puffs on the knot meter, then I make the sail flatter and lower it off the center line of the boat and drop it really into the slot of the jib. To see the mainsail as the trim tab or the flap on the overall sail plan, I visualize a straight line from the headstay back to the trailing edge or the leech of the main. And when we're overpowered, I've got the mainsail flat and way to leeward, flattening the overall sail plan, and when we need the power, I can pull the traveler up, main sheet on harder, adding more depth, and making the overall sail plan a much deeper foil. Right now we're sailing in about 5 knots of true wind, smooth water, and we'll set the main up to be quite powerful to generate some weather helm and get us up the track. First thing I do is pull the main sheet on just to see what we're working with. Try to get most of the shake out of the sail.
That feels better on the helm, Tommy.
Right, but we still have a very deep sail, particularly down low. Hans, if you could trim the outhaul, let's tighten it and flatten the whole lower section of the mainsail. That's better. We've just closed the foot shelf. That'll keep the baggy sail out from the slot, out from the bad air of the jib. I check the main sheet again. Now, I just want to make the point that this main sheet is your most critical adjustment. Most everything else you do, you'll have to come right back to the main sheet and make sure that this is your fine-tuned device. Now, you're trying to get the sail, the mainsail, to luff evenly from top to bottom, just like you are with the Genua. So I'll lower the traveler just to give myself a little check and see that bubble in the main. Make sure that it's even from the boom all the way up to the headboard at the top. It looks to be about even now, but we're not going very fast or pointing very high. So now that I've checked sort of my setting on the twist, I'll bring the traveler back up, centering the boom, putting it right back on center line. How's the boat feel now, Tom?
Real good. Actually, we got a little puff coming back, so maybe halfway between what you did just then and what we had before.
Okay, you're never satisfied, are you?
Sorry about that.
All right, down we go. I can see by the center stripe that we're still pretty deep, getting some backwind there, and we have a lot of depth in the sail in the middle. So we're going to bend the mast a little. That's the way. Now it's flattening out in the midsection.
How's that, Tom?
That's pretty good. When we bend the mast, the midsection of the mast goes a little further away from the leech. And when you put those two edges further apart, you flatten the whole middle. That's pretty good. Hans, if you could pull on a little bit of Cunningham tension, a little luff tension, that'll pull the draft back forward and make the front of the sail a little smoother. Most people trim the Cunningham much too hard. They pull it so the sail looks smooth instead of looking at the cross-sectional shape that you see in the stripes. What I've done so far is just to set the mainsail up to my eye, just visually to make it look pleasing from my past experience. But the acid test is to go back to the knot meter, make sure that we're keeping a constant high speed, and to the helm. Light air, it's tough to get enough helm and enough feel in the boat, so I'll try trimming the main sheet on a little harder. That's going to take some of the twist out. It'll make the top of the main come up even further to windward, and I can actually just stall that upper telltale, just get it to flicker. At that point, I've got the flaps down. We're putting as much power into the plan as we can. And if we pull it any harder to get that wonderful feel in the helm, we'll have a danger of actually watching the boat speed drop off and go slower. So now it's the trade-off between feeling good and going fast.
The thing that's most unique about trimming a Genua is that it provides most of the boat's driving force upwind, particularly on a masthead boat like this. The Genua trimmer, therefore, must be pretty attentive. The boats I sail on, the Genua trimmer typically sits down to leeward and plays with the Genua till he's perfectly happy with its setup. But the Genua, unlike the Maine, is out of sight and out of mind, so he doesn't get much help from the rest of the crew. The trimmer has to be pretty attentive. Also, the Genoa has to sail through about a 10-knot wind range, unlike the Maine that's up all the time. The ideal situation is when we can figure out ways to flatten it and make it deeper through varying wind conditions. That's the part of the job that the Genoa trimmer needs to be the most attentive to. Because the Genoa itself is the largest speed producer on the boat, the Genoa trimmer must be really on top of his sail trim and his coordination with the helmsman. Most Genoa trimmers that I sail with use the speedometer as a gauge. If they see the speed going up, they usually trim in a little bit and ask the helmsman to come up to respond. If they see the speed going down, they'll crack the sheet a bit and tell the main sheet trimmer to crack as well and tell the helmsman to come on down a little bit to build speed. Our Genoa trimmer, Gary Weissman, will begin by introducing all the Genoa controls.
I look at this sheet as being the primary control that I use to work the Genoa. The sheet is kind of like a throttle. It's going to determine the power that I allow the Genoa to have. It'll put curvature in the sail, it'll change the angle of attack of the Genoa, and control the twist. The first of the secondary controls is the lead adjuster. This boat has a movable traveler car for this lead adjuster. As I roll the lead forward, the leech of the Genoa will become more closed and the telltales will break down low in the sail. This might be the type of setting we'd use in lighter air or when we're trying to generate maximum power. Likewise, when the lead is further aft on a given sail, the leech will open up, appearing more twisted. The telltales will break high first, and the sail will be somewhat less powerful. We might use a setting like this in strong winds or at the upper end of a sail's given range when we're trying to slightly depower. Another control I have available to use is the backstay adjuster. In this boat, it's operated with a hydraulic pump. And when I tighten the backstay, in turn, it straightens the headstay. A straighter headstay will promote a flatter overall Genoa shape, straighten out the angle of entry on the left of the sail, and make for a higher pointing, less powerful sail. Conversely, using the backstay will put more headstay sag and make the sail fuller and a slightly curvier entry. In concert with the backstay adjuster, it's usually necessary to adjust the halyard as well. The halyard controls draft position. By tightening the halyard, you'll see a more draft forward shape. The sail will have a slightly rounder entry. This might be the way we'd set the Genoa up for lumpy water where we need to go low and fast. Likewise, a slack Genoa halyard will let the draft move aft, and the sail will be slightly faster for high pointing conditions such as what would be necessary in smooth water. Later, when we're sailing, I'll demonstrate to you how these controls affect sail trim. Normally we start by trimming the Genoa in to a point where we think it's approximately correct, and then check the lead for fore and aft position. And I'm going to roll the lead forward here slightly so that the sail will break evenly vertically up and down the luff of the sail. We have telltales at various locations vertically spaced, and if the top telltales are luffing first, then we roll the lead forward, and if the bottom telltales are luffing first, then we let the lead move aft. Once we get these telltales all breaking at about the same time, we tend to trim the sail on the middle telltales most of the time because sometimes the wind will act with a little bit of variance from top to bottom, and the best indication will be the middle telltales for general trim. Okay, now that we've got the fore and aft lead position where we think it's correct, the foot of the sail is trimming so that it's just touching the shroud base. And likewise, the leech of the sail is trimming very close to the spreader tip, which means the whole sail is trimmed in very close to the rig, which we feel is a proper setting for these conditions. Once I get the fore and aft lead position set correctly, I begin to look at the overall shape of the Genoa. If you really want to get good at this job of trimming the Genoa, you should spend some time during practices up underneath the middle of the foot of the Genoa looking at cross-sectional shapes. By getting a feel for that, you'll be able to do a better job when you're back here at the leech end of the sail. On this boat, we control the fullness of the sail by tensioning the permanent backstay. On a fractional rig boat, we use the running backstays to do the same job. Here I'm going to pump up the permanent backstay, which in turn straightens the headstay, thereby increasing the distance of the span from the leech of the Genoa to the luff. As I make this change, because we're pulling shape out of the front of the sail, the draft in the sail will end up drifting somewhat further aft. And in order to maintain the same draft position fore and aft, I'll have to take up the Genoa halyard as well. Now we've got the Genoa trim somewhat flatter with the draft roughly in the center of the sail and looking very nice for the conditions. These controls are all done in concert with one another through varying wind conditions, and as conditions change, we'll keep adjusting all of them. Likewise, it's important that a healthy dialogue is developed between the Genoa trimmer and the helmsman so that each of them knows what the other one needs for boat speed and also for tactical situations so that you can capitalize on maximum boat speed relative to the boats around you. Could have looked worse, I'll tell you that.
One thing that made this race particularly challenging is the wind was continually changing both in strength and direction.
Here we go, your kind of speed build trim here. I think there's more lift coming too, Tom.
Thank God. One thing that seemed to work during this period of time when we were trying to improve our boat speed was to get Hans sitting on the weather rail talking about what he was seeing happen up the course.
Hans, keep looking up ahead. It looks to me like this whole thing's settling in with a slight knock.
No, we're okay. You're lower than the front boat now.
Than the green boat.
And the green boat is higher. You're going to get another puff. It's coming into you now.
I got a tiller in my hand, but
you're coming
when Hans would call that a light spot was coming, Gary would typically ease his sheet a little, let the halyard down, ease the backstay, and really try to power the jib up as much as he could.
Okay, I'm getting excited. Speed's climbing.
Jib's coming back in with the speed build.
This one's going back to left a little, but actually that green boat up ahead is well up.
Yeah, he's well up.
Yep.
It's going to be
You're back to target speed.
One of the reasons we came
good?
back,
That's
there's
good.
more breeze in here.
Okay.
And
Got me powered up pretty good there, right, Gary?
Yep.
Okay. This light spot, it's not any party.
Just a little ease for you. Help the sail a little faster.
coming back.
There you go.
The next step was for Gary to turn around and say to Tom McLaughlin, hey, I've let my jib out a little bit and I'm powered up. Why don't you do the same on the
You
main?
get the feeling we're just not pointing as well as some of our boys? If so, I'll
I'm
trim
just
the main
using the
sheet on
backstay
hard.
just to make a little more powerful jib because we're going through these light spots and try and keep the power on the
Okay,
rig a
sounds
little
good.
bit more.
Let me know if you have too much helm because I'm trimming the main as hard as I can.
I'd like to point higher and go faster. Any ideas, Hans?
Yeah, I'll let you know tomorrow.
One of the most dramatic changes that we made, ironically, is that we let the halyard down on the Genoa to a point where we would have said it was a little too loose, but it actually made the boat go pretty fast. As we got up near the windward mark, our communication between the crew worked at its best.
Simon.
There's only one boat to worry about now. He's tacked.
Hey guys, ready about?
Yeah.
Hans was talking about what he saw for angles on the other boats, and he actually noticed a little shift going back to the left up near the mark. We were able to foot fast to the left-hand shift and then tack on to port and actually cross 3 or 4 boats.
Okay, wait up,
Go, 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 go.
Gotta cross here.
Okay, we're okay here. Right there.
Look for traffic now.
You're okay. Just keep going.
We pull wizard moves here, guys.
Keep the speed on.
So what really improved our performance here is the whole concept of shifting gears.
Mike. Who's on the bow?